Welcome to Decarbonize Talks to people who know more than I do. I'm here with Tom Gurski, BlueDot Motorworks, who's going to tell us about their plan to build another arrow in the quiver of decarbonization. Tom, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Just tell us a bit about what your vision is. For
Highest level view, the problem we're trying to solve is that really under no EV adoption scenario does the existing stock of vehicles turn over fast enough to drive emissions low enough to hit our climate targets for the sector. And so that tells us that we need a viable retrofit approach at scale. The real things holding that back, why it's always been a niche market, a bespoke market, is that it's always been extremely expensive and unscalable to execute. So we're really tackling those two problems by taking a fundamentally different approach. So instead of converting into battery electric, we convert into plug-in hybrid. That makes maximum use of what you've already got in the existing vehicle and lets you use about an 80% smaller battery, which is huge from a cost and weight and everything standpoint, environmental impact standpoint. Then of course you get all the plug-in hybrid benefits beyond that of no range anxiety, level 1 charging is totally fine, all those other benefits. But probably the biggest thing we're doing differently is what we call vehicle agnosticism. So we've developed a family of universal systems that within a given vehicle category can be applied to any vehicle. So now that means they can be mass produced at a dramatically lower price. And then the third real pillar is an installation process that's simple and consistent, so it can be performed by third parties and fast enough that the labor costs don't kill your savings. So we believe that we'll be able to, with a little bit of online training material, be able to set up any mechanic anywhere in the world to install our systems in about a day.
Wow, that's very impressive. So let's dig a little deeper into your system. Why don't you show us around?
Yeah, so this is what we call our narwhal system. This is the one we're launching with. It's for basically pickup trucks, vans, SUVs, anything on a truck-based platform with a solid rear axle. Our other system that we call the humpback is for car-based platforms. But the narwhal here, it interfaces underneath the vehicle. We basically cut a section out of the vehicle's drive shaft, weld on 2 flanges, and then bolt a drive unit into the middle of the drive shaft. Inside of that, you've got motors, a clutch, and a transmission. And then we connect a reaction torque linkage up to that to prevent that from spinning that connects up to the axle tubes. So a very simple installation process, works with any vehicle that has that layout of suspension and drivetrain. And then the battery pack can go in the cargo area like it is on this vehicle. It can go in the bed of a pickup truck. We can even put it on a trailer hitch receiver if you don't want to give up any interior space. We use lithium iron phosphate cells, which have long life, low cost, very safe, no thermal runaway issues. And then there's a user interface that gets installed in the cab for controlling the system. We operate either 100% on our system, so not involving the engine at all, or 100% on the engine, not involving our system at all. So that helps us get away from a lot of the regulatory concerns around aftermarket systems that might affect vehicle emissions. Ours doesn't, because you're either purely electric, which has no emissions, or you're 100% on the native systems, so you're not affecting those either.
Oh, so if you're driving down the road on gas and you hit the brakes, you don't get regenerative braking, or you do?
Correct, you do not. Yep.
What?
You do not get regenerative braking when you're operating on the engine. There's actually minimal gain to be had from that in a retrofit situation. If you're building it into the car from scratch, that can help a lot. But in general, people overestimate the benefits of regen braking. The best thing is just to coast.
Okay. And so what's your vision on when people would have electric versus when they would have gas?
Most people are going to just start out their day on electric power and operate until that battery is dead. We're targeting about 35 miles minimum for our system, and then just switch over to gas after that. And if you look at typical driving habits in the US, where average is around 35-40 miles per day, and certainly less than that in most of the world. So that amount of range covers the vast majority of driving that people do.
So we can go freeway speeds with your system.
Yeah, targeting a top speed of about 80 miles an hour. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's just basically just a switch up in the cab?
Yeah, a display that tells you your state of charge of your battery, lets you select forward and reverse, turn your charger on, those types of functions. Yeah.
And is acceleration still done with the same pedal for gas and electric?
It is. We actually mount an auxiliary pedal on top of the existing gas pedal, and so you utilize that when you're on electric power, and then you just push through it to use the gas engine.
Oh, is that automatically when you push through? Does it automatically, or do you still need to switch?
You still need to switch over.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But you basically have a couple of inches of dead travel top. It's not difficult at all to adapt to. Far easier than like learning to drive a stick shift or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the battery pack. Okay. So here's the battery pack. This is a Gen 1 prototype.
Yeah, this is the very first battery pack we built all the way back from the very first proof of concept. We've just been carrying it forward because it frankly gets the job done for prototyping purposes, and there's not a lot of magic in our battery pack. That's not where the innovation lies. So this pack is actually quite a bit bigger, about twice the size of what the final pack for a vehicle this size would be. But it contains the LFP cells, the motor driver, the charger, the DC-DC converter to keep the 12-volt system of the vehicle topped up. That's all just in one integrated package. About 200 pounds for the pack, yeah.
Okay. And you said you could even be trailer hitch mounted.
It could be trailer hitch mounted, yep. Basically, I'm going to turn on the ignition but not start the engine. Then I power up the system here. This is obviously a very prototypey interface. It will be a much smaller touchscreen in the final product. So here a couple of whirring noises start. One of those is the electric power steering pump that we have plumbed in parallel with the engine-driven pump. You may hear an electric brake booster kick on and off that provides vacuum when the engine is not running. And then, of course, there's some cooling fans in the battery pack that are going back there. But I'm just going to, using the existing controls.
It sounds different.
Yeah, it's this is a bit noisier than we will ultimately be because of that chain drive in the transmission instead of the gears, and it's also a fully open transmission, whereas the final product will be enclosed in an aluminum case. So we're set up for one pedal driving. So whenever I let off, it coasts down and gives us that regen braking. See the power draw go negative and starts charging the battery. That way we don't have to do anything differently with the brake pedal, so that that kind of innate panic reaction is completely unaffected by having the system installed. Cool.
Yeah.
Something just let go. This coupling just slipped right off. Demo's over. Yeah, as I was saying earlier, you build prototypes for a specific purpose. This one was built to prove the feasibility and practicality of certain aspects of our technology, not to be establish the durability of the product. And we just had a durability incident where we dropped the motor on the pavement, so we'll go and get that fixed up and be back and running in no time.
In terms of cost, what do you see as the cost for the hardware for the kit?
Yeah,
and then the cost to install.
Right. So we basically have a 2x2 product matrix. We have our car-based platform and our truck-based platform, and each of those will be available in 2 different sizes depending on the size of the vehicle that are being converted. So on the low end, if you're talking about a small car or a crossover, it'd be about $6,000 for the kit, and then about a day of mechanics time for installation. On the larger end, so going up to like a heavy-duty pickup truck, something like a F250, F350 category, be $9,000 to $10,000 for the kit. The serviceable market is pretty easy to define. Basically, if we look at all the vehicles that would realize a positive return on investment and are good candidates for conversion, so out of warranty, driven in that kind of sweet spot for plug-in hybrids, then between now and 2050, if you look at all the vehicles that will be on the road, it's about a $5 trillion serviceable market. Obviously, the obtainable portion of that will be quite a bit smaller. How much smaller, we'll have to see. I started playing with this technology back in 2015. It was basically a side hustle to my consulting company that I had going at the time. been in startup mode since around 2020. There's 3 people involved on the core team. So Redwood Stevens, from Synapse, he's our chief product officer. And then I have Suzanne Vernevy, who's on the East Coast, handling a lot of the business tech.
See, as at this point, your biggest challenge?
Fundraising. It's Seattle's a tough place to raise money for hardware. And I've definitely learned that the VC world doesn't really like new markets. They want to play in established markets where you don't have that. Is this something people actually will pay for? Question looming over everything. And it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. If we had our next prototype on the road, I think we would be able to recruit enough pre-sales and customers to answer that question. But getting to that there's a bit of a capital barrier.
So, and just so people know, there'll be a link in the description. They are fundraising, and if you're interested in participating in that, there'll be a link in the description to the video. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I can tell you it's real. So what else do you think, other than what you've told me already, is important for people to know about what you're trying here?
That's a good question. What's important to know? It's interesting when we tell people who aren't necessarily gearheads or whatnot about what we're doing, we get one of 2 reactions. One is they're either blown away by the idea of a plug-in hybrid because they didn't know that was a thing, or they're blown away by the idea of being able to retrofit an existing car. And unfortunately, I think there's been a lot of lack of education around the plug-in hybrid solution in general. It just amazes me that that's not more widely known as tribal knowledge. And then on the retrofit side, people love the idea of it because it makes such good use of resources. I certainly know lots of people who are extremely environmentally conscious, but they're still driving their old gas car because they appreciate that the production of a new car puts you in the hole by a pretty significant amount. And we ran the numbers on that in a lot of different ways. And in a nutshell, if you're talking about a car that wouldn't have otherwise been produced, you've got to drive that EV by somewhere between 6 and 8 years before you even break even on carbon. So it's a real issue, and they're not wrong to take that approach. So this gives you essentially the best of both worlds. You get to avoid all that upfront carbon in production, but you now get to do almost all your driving on electric power.
Well, I mean, I can understand why people aren't familiar with the retrofit because, I mean, I remember back in the old days, before the Leaf came out, sort of between the GM EV1 and the Leaf, there were conversions done by hardcore hobbyists.
Right. Yeah,
we
have the Seattle Electric Vehicle Association here.
Right.
You're familiar with them. Yeah.
Those of us who were kind of hardcore were aware of conversions, but it was this is like LARPing. Like if you most people have never heard of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then after, maybe I think the Leaf and Tesla came out, if you want an EV, you just went out and bought one. Yeah. And so I'm not surprised that people have a low awareness of conversion.
The headwind we face is that on the sort of policy and advocacy side of things, people are aware of the solution, but it's been completely written off on the basis of cost.
Right.
And so you'll get legislation that incentivizes EVs, but specifically excludes conversion, which I never really understood in the first place, because why do you care if it's expensive? You're still getting the benefit of it.
I can tell you why. You won't like the answer.
No, I'm sure I wouldn't, and I know what you're gonna say there.
It's because they want money to flow into sales tax and car dealerships, and too many people don't get their skin in the game with the conversion, and you're probably going to face that.
For sure. Yeah.
Car dealerships aren't going to like you. You're keeping cars on the road.
Yeah.
Or even to the extent, like when I bought my new EV and I traded one in with the dealer, so they got to sell me a car and I got to sell my old car too.
Right.
So they're fine with that trade up.
Yeah.
But you're going to be taking money out of the mouths of car dealerships and the taxes.
I think to some degree, I think our customer is probably not the one that would likely be going out and buying a brand new car. And brand new cars are increasingly coming out of reach for normal folks. You probably saw the news that the average new car cost just exceeded $50,000. And if you run the numbers on that with what a typical car loan looks like and what it's recommended for a median wage earner to spend on transportation, a new EV is now about 500% out of budget for a median wage earner. And the used market is about 3 times the size of the new market.
Right. Well, I mean, there is a good used market for EVs right now. And who knows how long, if gas prices take a tick up, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden all those used EVs get soaked up quickly.
Right. People are still weary about used EVs from the battery longevity standpoint. I think those concerns are turning out to be overblown. Especially as the industry shifts over to LFP and maybe eventually into sodium. We're really excited about sodium. We think it works great for plug-in hybrid applications with frequent deep discharges and performance in cold weather and all that. Pays really big dividends on the plug-in hybrid architecture. So I'm hoping that maybe not our first generation, but at least our second generation is using sodium batteries.
Well, the nice thing about your solution is the complicated stuff has nothing to do with the battery.
Right.
It's just a source of
current.
Current.
Yep, off the shelf. We could very easily buy a battery pack from a third-party vendor and slap it on our system, and we'd be totally fine. That's not where the innovation is, obviously. But rising tide raises all ships. So, batteries getting better helps everybody.
Thinking about what durability testing are you planning?
Extensive. We will do lots of vehicles. We'll put lots of miles on lots of vehicles before we release our commercial units. That will also involve crash testing.
That's expensive.
It's expensive, but the good news is we're not crash testing new vehicles. We're crash testing used vehicles, and you don't really care what used vehicle you crash.
Is the crash testing a requirement, or are there concerns you have with that?
It's more to put ourselves and our customers at ease. The automotive aftermarket, particularly in the U.S., is very loosely regulated. Only certain activities really fall into any kind of comprehensive regulatory set. Emissions control is the most rigorously constrained space. And since we have no adverse effects on emissions, we essentially fall out of that scope. Things like brake lines are moderated, but if you look at the way conversions are done these days, there's really nothing stopping anybody from just going out and getting their car converted into an EV.
So you don't have any significant regulatory hurdles?
Not that we believe, no.
Would that be true, say, in Europe as well?
Europe, it's a little trickier. So they're a little more locked down on their how they treat the aftermarket. People still do a lot of aftermarket modifications. Our strategy for Europe, and it's a really attractive market to us because fuel prices are so much higher. Whereas an average American might see a 3 or 4 year payback period, an average European might be half of that. So very attractive from a return on investment standpoint. So we want to establish the market presence and the benefits of the solution in the United States first, and then be able to approach Europe in a cooperative manner. Maybe we need to have a few regulations tweaked, but if we can be able to demonstrate the carbon and climate benefits of this approach, we think there are very reasonable tweaks that can be made to regulations that exist to make products like ours viable.
Well, that's a much bigger lift, though, but you have time for that.
We do have time for that, yeah.
So what's your timeline?
So we're raising a seed round now that will take us to alpha prototype. So that will be a prototype that fully represents the product from the user perspective. And then we'll build 10 to 12 beta units that will be used for pilot programs. We started to onboard those customers now. We're targeting fleets initially. So we're going after municipalities, school districts, campuses, on the public side of things. And then on the commercial fleet side, it's construction, telecom, anybody that operates pickup trucks and vans in their fleets. And we'll throw a couple of consumers in there as well, just to get some experience with that market. Then after that, it's raising a Series A and establishing the commercial product supply chains and whatnot, spinning up a facility. Although that'll likely be with a contract manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So if all goes well, we could be in production in the 2028, 2029 timeframe.
That's fairly fast.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're self-sufficient pretty early, and then it's a question of how quickly do we want to scale, and does that make sense to take on additional venture capital? Obviously, we want to have as much climate impact as possible, and speed is the name of the game there. So I think we probably would go that route. So I think that would likely put us in probably the 2030 timeframe for a Series B.
So you see the Series A is sufficient to get a product to market.
Get the product to market, yeah, using tooled up for mass production. Yeah, but not on the scale of hundreds of thousands of units per year. Yeah.
Well, you don't want to do that on day one.
You don't want to do that on day one.
I want to thank Tom for his time and energy sharing his vision of making our existing car fleet cleaner. And I do think he's on to something. Looking at their initial product aimed at light trucks, even if you don't care about climate change, the product is interesting. If you own a truck that's out of warranty and you drive it about 30 miles a day and gas costs more than about $3.50 a gallon, then this retrofit makes sense. It pays for itself within 4 years. Given that Ford sold over 700,000 F-150s in 2024, that describes a large number of opportunities for retrofit. And being that trucks sold today will be on the road for about 20 years, turning it into a plug-in hybrid makes a lot of financial sense. More than scrapping a drivable truck does. But it makes even more sense when you also consider climate change. Transportation is responsible for about 30% of emissions in the US, and this is a classic hard to decarbonize sector. Building transit and reforming zoning laws and developing transit-oriented communities will take decades. EVs are slowly becoming mainstream. In the US, only about 9% of new cars are EVs, while globally the percentage is about twice that. And most of the internal combustion engine vehicles being sold today will still be on the road in 2040. So I think Tom is right to think about how to reduce emissions from the cars and trucks on the road. The more I think about it, the more I like the idea. And since batteries are a big part of the cost, as the price of batteries drop, the return on investment of installing a retrofit becomes even stronger. I'm not saying you should invest in BlueDot Motorworks, as I'm not a financial advisor and I'm not competent to review the term sheet. But if you'd like to help bring these kits to market, there's a link in the description to their WeFunder campaign. And if you'd like to help me make these videos, you can buy me a pint. And please share this video with everyone you know who drives an internal combustion engine vehicle that they like about 30 miles a day.